Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Alhamdulillah, namhadu wa nusalli ala rasulil karim. Saudara Rafizi Ramli, Menteri Ekonomi, dan Tan Sri Wahid dan pasukan bursa, rakan-rakan dari Maybank, Johan, KSP dan pasukan dari Kementerian Kewangan dan semua tetamu-tetamu kehormat. Saya ucap penghargaan setinggi-tingginya dan setelah mendengar dua pidato penting tadi dan meletakkan garis haluan besar bagi pertumbuhan ekonomi, pasaran saham dan juga kemungkinan kepesatan pergerakan dan perjalanan bank di negara kita. Saya ucap terima kasih kerana dalam dua-dua pidato awal tadi nampak memberikan beberapa harapan dan rangsangan baru dan keyakinan bukan sahaja kepada belanjawan tapi juga Malaysia Madani yang kita terokai sebagai suatu landasan dan tunggak. Apa maksudnya? Maksudnya ialah bahawa kita harus melakukan anjakan. Negara ini ada potensi untuk menjadi suatu kekuatan ekonomi baru. Dan saya percaya rakan-rakan saya termasuk Saudara Rafizi akan memanfaatkan waktu nanti untuk memberi penjelasan tentang langkah-langkah yang harus diambil yang agak berbeza dari pendekatan lama. Pendekatan lama itu tidak memberi, tentunya ada asas kekuatan, tetapi bila bicara soal tata kelola dan governance, saya fikir ini kelemahan besar dalam negara kita. Jadi ini menimbulkan kebimbangan. Tetapi rasa cemas ini harus dirubah. Ya, saya tidak melihat kenyataan perkembangan dunia dan juga perkembangan dalam negara yang sukar itu sebagai sesuatu yang menakutkan. Ladies and gentlemen, fear for one's way of life and past achievements fading into irrelevance. Fear that we would never go back to the way they were. Ibn Khaldun, the great historian and sociologist, in the Muqaddimah, referred to this very pertinent text. Throughout history, many nations have suffered a physical defeat, but that has never marked the end of a nation. But when a nation has become the victim of a psychological defeat, then that marks the end of a nation. So, listening to both the earlier speakers gives me great hope, and I'm sure many of you would share the sense of renewed confidence with a firm commitment that the way we conduct our affairs must change, particularly with the new spirit of transparency, of democratic accountability, and good governance. We as a nation, as Malaysians, must shape our future and utilize the potential that we have and not allow for a number of political elites to continue squandering the resources constructed out of a cornucopia of class, creed, and color. Yet, in times of diversity, we, the people, come and must come together in the spirit of resilience and unity that will tide us through any of these challenging times. The Belanjawan Madani, for example, laid down the foundation of a Malaysia that I and my colleagues and other Malaysians have longed and envisioned. A Malaysia Madani that puts Malaysians, irrespective of race or creed, especially the poor, the marginalized, and the vulnerable, at the heart of its development. For the uninitiated, allow me to address the thrust behind Malaysia Madani. And I'm impressed because this has been fully grasped by the earlier two speakers. But the vision is designed to revive, renew, and re-energize sustainability, prosperity, innovation, respect, trust, and compassion. And we aim to reshape the narrative of our country based on three priorities: growth, reform, and justice. The driving economic growth that is inclusive and sustainable. I will focus on growth, specifically growth that is inclusive and sustainable. Current estimates of global economic performance warn of headwinds ahead. Analysts and researchers point to a global growth of 1.7% in 2023, a slowdown compared to 2.9% in 2022. And you are all experts in this, but you know I'm a bit personally quite cynical about these figures because they keep on changing. You may remember that I used to chair the development committee of the World Bank and the IMF. And last year, I think they revised the growth scenario 4 times. So be wary, yes, but be upbeat and positive, because the determinants in this country would be guided by what we do as a nation, as a business community, and as policymakers. So the probability of a US recession within the next 12 months occupies strategic debate. And I leave it to the experts like Rafizi and the rest to debate on this. But I will focus on the issue of the more positive note, whilst recognizing that there are concerns, but I remain, like in my political career, an incorrigible optimist. And I've proven, at least for a time, that we can make it and we can do it together. Now, global inflation shows signs of peaking. The estimation is that it will only move downward rather slowly. Bank Negara Malaysia reports Malaysian headline inflation averaging 3.4% for the period January-November 2022, expected to moderate, but still remain at elevated levels amid lingering demand and cost pressures. Now the good news, ASEAN is emerging as a defensive harbor. GDP growth for ASEAN's 5, excluding Singapore, is estimated to remain resilient at 4.7% in 2023, down from 5.9% in 2022. China, a key economic engine, and for us, a key economic partner, is in the process of its reopening, the timing and extent of which we are all watching eagerly. And I think in the tourism sector, it was of immense advantage to us. I've seen flights from Korea and from China into Sabah that has been quite unprecedented. So for 2022, we achieved a stellar GDP growth of 8.7%, and we project that Malaysia will achieve 4.5% in 2023. A notable achievement given the global economic environment. So in general, 2022 was driven by a combination of economic recovery as most sectors returned to work, as well as large-scale pandemic recovery measures. Now, while these actions were necessary to protect ordinary Malaysians, one thing stands true. It was delivered at a heavy cost. The federal government debt now sits below 61% of GDP, while the statutory limit being at 65% of GDP, having been raised twice during the pandemic. Taken together with contingent liabilities, our total debt is 1.5 trillion ringgit, or 81% of GDP. Let me be frank and recognize two key points or issues. One, can we activate and implement everything all at once? Well, the answer is no. There must be sensible progression as well as the fiscal responsibility to maximize our means and yet still work within them. Secondly, recognize that people of ordinary means are under increasing economic pressure, even for the basic matters such as feeding, sheltering, and ensuring the future progression of one's family. Sensibly, one must build, secure, and enable the ladders that will help the nation escape the middle income trap. And for those at the very bottom, help them climb out of the despair of poverty. Without this, all is in vain. Belanjawan Madani is designed to address these challenges head-on through fiscal reform, rebuilding our fiscal buffers and economic, fiscal, and debt resilience. What we have done as a practical and pragmatic first step is to largely maintain the level of overall spending. However, allocations have been strategically readjusted to better serve the nation and rebuild the critical core aspirations of Malaysian society at large. I need to emphasize the need for transparency and to observe strict financial procedures. I have to reiterate the point that billions have been lost. No exaggeration. In every single major project, the way we do business must change. And let me assure you that this administration will not compromise on the principle of good governance and anti-corruption measures. I had the opportunity of meeting very successful homegrown startups such as Kasom, Opstar, and FarmFresh. My administration is committed to support high-value-add local startups from early stage right up to listing onto Bursa Malaysia. Towards this, GLICs will set aside 1.5 billion ringgit in 2023 to invest in such homegrown startups. A tax deduction will be provided on listing costs for companies listing on ACE, LEAP, as well as technology stocks onto the main board. And I think this is the insistence of Wahid. Listed companies will be allowed assistance of dual-class shares. We certainly want to ensure that successful startups will have access to later stage financing here in Malaysia so that they do not need to seek listing abroad. Now, ladies and gentlemen, reforming institution and governance to restore confidence. The Fiscal Responsibility Act and Government Procurement Act are key pieces of legislation moving forward. For too long, issues such as wastages, leakages, lack of transparency and accountability have hampered the best efforts to move the country forward. Which brings me to the government's second priority of reforming institution and governance. The scourge of corruption, ill-gotten gains and bribery have no place in this nation. The people deserve better, far better, and so do the businesses and the investors who are drawn to our unique advantage. The reforms we have made and the ones we will make in due time all concern this area of wastage and loss. For instance, transparency in procurement award and quality execution of any government business is now a rule, not a mere norm. While some questions this administration's forthrightness in highlighting issues of this nature, believing that it casts aspersions on our national image, We believe the opposite. To start rebuilding confidence in our future, we must be honest about the problems that we face today. I've said this many times, and I will repeat it here again. The government adopts a zero-tolerance approach towards misconduct and corruption. We will uphold the highest ethical standards, and there will be no room for abuse of power under this administration. Any breaches will be severely dealt with, whether you are Tone or Tan Sri, regardless, whether you are with this government or with the opposition, we will act without fear or favor. Now, good corporate governance must remain the basis on which businesses, companies, and shareholders operate. This is also necessary to ensure that good governance provides robust safeguards for investor protection and the stability of financial and capital markets. Of course, we need full support from the Securities Commission and Bursa. Now, let's deal with upholding social justice and to combat inequality. The third priority of this government is to uphold social justice and combat inequality. The nation's economic expansion and growth should be achieved in the wider context of human economy. Well, I term it as humane economy, karamah insania, that prioritizes the people's need, especially the poor and marginalized. We must free them from poverty's grip, perpetuated, some would to say, by an unbridled capitalist system that has nurtured inequality in wealth and living standards. The measures in Belanjawan Madani deal with the eradication of hardcore poverty and minimizing the burden of cost of living. The poorest must be lifted, and the IRP initiative by Rafizi is one critical effort, initiative in this direction. And so that they can move and save their families from the scourge of poverty. I'm referring to the IPR initiative, or People's Income Initiative, a powerful platform to correct this societal imbalance. It works through providing opportunities for the poor to increase their income potential in farming, as in food, and general maintenance service providers. Now, let me pause for a moment here, because this approach is a departure from the traditional approach of providing systems for the poor and keeping them at that level so that they're totally dependent on us. If you follow the political economist Samir Amin, he referred to the dependency syndrome. Now, this is contrary to our approach, is to help lift them from poverty and not to continue to depend on the political masters to help them in exchange for their support in the next elections. Now, technology, manufacturing, and the growth of the digital-driven economy. Alongside these key infrastructure developments, the establishment of technology hubs in Penang and Johor, as well as the potential of Sabah and Sarawak in terms of competitive energy costs. These areas have attracted much interest and even begun securing approved investments. As technology and the virtual or even the metaverse advances, our connectivity still matters as a major trading nation. In this respect, the process to expand and improve airport capacity in Penang and Subang, led by the Malaysian Airports Holdings, as well as sea access via Sanglang Port in Perlis and a main port in Pulau Keri are key elements. Now, ladies and gentlemen, green business is not only crucial to economic sustainability, but also for all life and its attendant qualities. Malaysia is blessed, alhamdulillah. Our home is also a home to some of the world's oldest rainforests, and our seas share an area recognized as one of the richest reservoirs of biodiversity. These are natural, God-given assets. To protect them and value them highly is a must. In terms of assets, we must build for ourselves in this area. Through Bank Negara Malaysia, we'll provide financing to support green technology startups, while also helping SMEs implement low-carbon practices. Other forms of support in this area come in the form of a green technology financing scheme, investment tax allowance, and income tax exemption for eligible activities. Alongside, runs an enhanced focus in investments in green growth areas, including hydrogen technology, bioenergy, and electric mobility. And interesting enough, Sarawak is taking the lead in these fields. Enablers of green adoption across sectors as well as future economic engines. A key part of the emphasis in these areas is ensuring that Malaysians also gain from the transfer of high-tech knowledge and skills while prioritizing research and development efforts. It is one of the areas for the further development of technical and vocational training, or TVET, that is being redesigned for greater participation of the private sector, while in conventional academia, updates on university syllabi are being developed. Now, TVETs, I still welcome companies, banks, to take over some of our government existing TVETs and to run it to fit your own requirement, so there is no mismatch between the training TVET and the requirement of industries. We have about 50 conglomerates and companies led by Petronas have taken over some of these institutions, and I think that would augur well for the future of our youth. I look forward to projects in this field growing to a position where they can make use of Malaysia's voluntary carbon market that is operated by Bursa Malaysia. Launched in December last year, the Bursa Carbon Exchange, or BCX, is a vital catalyst in the acceleration towards a net zero future. Notably, it is the first exchange in the world to receive a Sharia pronouncement for its carbon exchange. Congratulations. To support the national journey to achieve that net zero as early as 2050, I am pleased to announce that the government is committing to a seed fund amounting to 10 million ringgit to act as an assured demand for Malaysian-generated carbon credits to kickstart the market. Clearly, when talking about a viable future for the environment, where respect for the planet and quality of life are driving principles, it is a natural fit for further development and support through Islamic finance, a field where Malaysia has long been recognized as a global leader. The government is committed to enhance Islamic finance ecosystem further so that it can drive real societal change, especially through the optimization of Waqf. In this regard, the Securities Commission will, with effect from 3rd April 2023, extend the Waqf Featured Fund Framework to include Islamic Real Estate Investments Trusts and Islamic Exchange Traded Funds. Now, I will deal with the constantly evolving and responding. Malaysia must remain more ready and open. The new investment policy is a forward-looking framework to ensure we remain ready to cater to changes in the global economy and to spur investments in future sectors. In many ways, it guides, facilitates, and helps implement reforms to strengthen the fundamentals of our investment ecosystem. We are open to innovation in emerging opportunities. Part of this is dealing with the review of intellectual property policies to address issues such as evergreening or artificial extensions of market exclusivity that exist in certain sectors. Efforts are also underway to improve government's advisory services for local companies and entrepreneurs in their efforts in creating and exploiting IP. We are open to agile incentives. This includes fiscal and non-fiscal incentives on a more sector-agnostic basis to enable agility in catering to evolving technologies and global priorities, including projects that exist in the fields of renewable energy, the digital economy, as well as R&D that cuts across sectors. We are keen to better meet needs of companies and investors. I understand there are parties who are concerned with respect to the government's announcement to study capital gains tax on unlisted shares at a low rate. I would like to give you the government's commitment. First, the tax will only be finalized upon extensive engagement with stakeholders. Second, the tax will not be introduced on listed shares. Third, the disposal of unlisted shares for an approval initial public offering will also not be subject to capital gains tax. So please support and don't create too many problems. Bursa Saham serves as an important avenue for companies to raise capital for growth via the primary market. With the growing need for companies to scale their businesses, I am pleased to note that the SC, together with Bursa Malaysia, will introduce the LEAP market transfer framework for companies to migrate from LEAP market to the ACE market. At the same time, Bursa Malaysia will introduce a new recognized approved advisor framework that will expand the pool of advisors for the ACE market. Lastly, I think the invitation by Bursa and Maybank was conditional that I announced these issues. Lastly, we are open to the demands of ESG. Not only are we open, we seek to accelerate the transition and transformation of industries and local players towards ESG adoption, even for SMEs. For example, through MITI, consultation and engagement with local international stakeholders, is ongoing to develop the national ESG framework for the manufacturing sector by 2024. And I believe Tengku Zafrul will enlighten you further on this subject. Malaysia is taking a leadership role in the low-carbon journey by bringing a platform to help companies measure, monitor, and drive reduction in carbon. In this regard, I am pleased to announce that next month, Bursa Malaysia, working with the London Stock Exchange Group, will be rolling out a centralized sustainability reporting platform. This will enable companies, both public listed companies as well as non-listed SMEs, to calculate their carbon emissions impact. It will also help them to disclose standardized common ESG data in a way that conforms to established global standards. This platform has the potential to be a key enabler to Malaysia's pivot to green and to support our sustainable development while creating high-skilled jobs for our progress towards a high-income nation. I am often asked, ladies and gentlemen, about the state of the nation's political climate. Some of you are too polite to ask. But as a unity government, we are committed and upfront about building and steering the nation together in a cohesive and constructive manner. This cooperation also drives and coordinates efforts and provides the basis for greater local autonomy to get working on addressing inequalities. This is crucial in reworking a long-standing economic imbalances, not only between Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah and Sarawak, but also the urban and rural divide and urban issues relating to urban poverty or the urban poor. We may be a relatively young nation, but our path to political and democratic maturity has been a steep yet steady climb, especially within the last decade. The reshaping of the Malaysian narrative is a continuous work in progress. I strongly believe that in building Malaysia Madani, the greatest barrier to progress lies within us. May Allah the Almighty give us the strength and fortitude to move past these challenges together and rewrite the new narrative for Malaysia. Sekali lagi saya ucap terima kasih kepada Bursa dan Maybank atas inisiatif ini dan saya berbangga dapat bersama dan saya dengan segala hormatnya merasmikan Invest Malaysia 2023.